Hey guys, Darth back with another Queen's Blade Limit Break video, and let's talk stats. Why? Mainly because I'm bored as shit. It's 1 o'clock in the morning and I got nothing else to do. I'm just kidding. I like stats, guys. I love the nuts and bolts of a game. Maybe sometimes trying to figure out if I can outsmart another player, with builds and strategies and stuff like that. But as a quick disclaimer, let's be honest. I mean, most of these games, they just kind of revolve around, whoever has the highest speed and whoever has the highest attack, crit rate and damage. You don't really see a lot of diversity in games because they either don't make the other stats worth it, or I'm not really a big fan of the whole speed game, although I'm not really sure how people would actually go about reducing the effectiveness of speed. But that's not really what I want to talk about today. I want to go in to look at some stats and a response I got back from the dev, and I'm still waiting to hear back to them on several things. Under the recommendation here, you can go into the facts. I want to take a look at a few things real quick. One being skill effects. I don't think a lot of people take a look at this. You have blood, curse, poison, and dealing fixed damage. Keep that in mind. Fixed damage every turn. More damage is inflicted as the debuff stack. So they're basically debuffs, but they deal fixed damage based on the description of the toon or warrior that you're looking at. Immobilizing effects: stun, petrify, freeze, sleep, and paralyze. They immobilize the warrior so that they can't act. I think that this is an overlooked stats when it comes to fighting bosses or an opponent, and not, I think people overlook building their warriors to make their stuns more effective. Seal is interesting. Warriors cannot crit or trigger passes. There's not a lot of toons that actually, or warriors, I keep saying toons, that actually have seal, but not being able to crit, because let's face it, being able to crit in a lot of games is massive. If you can't crit, you're not maximizing your damage, and it could mean the difference between a long fight or a quick fight. And when it comes to leaderboards, damage is everything too. Feint. Cannot move for 1 turn. Does not stack. I think there's only a couple of, there's very rarely will you see feint. Silence is actually on a couple of toons. Provoke, pretty self-explanatory. A lot of people see this. However, I would like to see provoke a little more. I would like to see provoke on all tanks as in some way, shape. It's not always feasible, and I get that some tanks work a little bit differently, but we'll talk about that. Buff stacking. Basically, buffs do not stack unless explicitly stated. If one buff overlaps with another, only the most powerful buff will trigger. People I think overlook this one, and I didn't realize this until I saw it. This would be like if you have a toon that increases your attack, and then you have another toon that increases your attack. Only the more powerful buff is going to take. You can't take another toon and increase the attack by 15% and then have somebody increase your attack by 50%. It doesn't work that way. You're not going to get both. You're going to get one. So there's no point in building multiple attack. Same thing with crit. If you're running a toon that has crit and another one that has crit, only the most powerful effect is going to take place. So keep that in mind when you're building a team, if that's what you're doing around that. But keep in mind that these status effects here, burn and stuff, they deal fixed damage every turn, because I'm going to come back to that. Let's go down to stats and attribute points, because this is where things really kind of get interesting, and it depends on how you look at it. If you're bored, go ahead and click off now. That's fine. I won't be offended. This is just a general conversation with the audience, if you will. These are self-explanatory. Attack, defense, HP, damage, speed. Resistance is subjective. Reduction is a little bit subjective. Attribute, player versus player. damage and attack points are generally correlated. Defense and health points, speed. I'm not a big fan of games where speed is the most important thing. I mean, you go first, you stack damage, you kill the other person before they get their buffs up. Oh, okay. Well, that's not fun either. Uh, let's talk about some of these because some of these are interesting. Crit rate, we all know it's a chance of landing a crit. Crit damage bonus in this game is pretty standard. Start off with like 150% additional damage, and that can be increased. Immobilizing is the addition. The immobilize stat is the additional chance to immobilize a target with skills that apply that. I think that is often overlooked. I'm going to take a look at an example here, but we'll read the next one. Immobilizing a target with a skill that applies its effect. Immobilizing resistance, the additional chance to resist an immobilizing effect. I think that these two, I've seen some people's builds which are somewhat misleading because you can't fully inspect somebody, and I noticed this when fighting the takedown boss, is that I get immobilized quite often because they have a high immobilization rate. There are actually quite a few warriors here that apply immobilizing effects. Case in point, the mind actually excels at freezing, the mind attribute. The skill, I want to say skill has some of them too, but I mean they're spread out. But the first one that comes to mind is the mind attribute warriors, where freeze seems to be a huge aspect of what a lot of those tunes do. And I think, kind of going back to what I say is, when damage is king, do as much damage as possible. Yeah, that's great. But if you can immobilize a target and they can't do damage, well, it all the more better. I mean, if you can't damage me because I'm immobilizing you, well, then you're the one that's screwed, not me. Now that has to do with turn order and stuff. So when it comes to building out your tunes and stuff, I think that this is overlooked. We'll look at some ways you can increase that. Crit resist, the chance to resist a crit. Okay, again, this is, I think, when people go into start building their stats, I think that this one is going to be overlooked. But the next one is actually even more confusing. Accuracy. The additional chance of successfully landing a crit hit. Now, if I'm reading this right, accuracy is directly related to crit rate. I did not realize that at first, and that does not make sense. Accuracy, usually when I've encountered accuracy, it has to do with agility. It has to do with landing a hit and countering, let's say, parrying, blocking, or in this game, I think it's called right here, evading. I should have just read it. Evasion, the chance to dodge a hit. But no, this one says it's an additional chance to successfully land a crit hit. Okay, that's confusing to me, but hey, I think that this makes accuracy it puts accuracy up there though with crit rate. I mean, if that's actually true, and the reason I think that is because crit resist, the chance of resisting a critical hit. I went through and looked at some of the warriors prior to starting this little long rant here, and I do recall that there are a few warriors that reduce accuracy. There are not many of them. I don't recall which one they are, but I think it's like at the start of battle they reduce your accuracy. That puts accuracy actually up there pretty high. If accuracy gives you an additional chance to successfully land a critical hit, it's actually a direct counter to crit resist. Actually, crit resist actually reduces your chance of hitting a critical hit. I'm pretty sure that crit resist counters crit rate. Accuracy doesn't have a counter. We'll take a look at some examples of that because it is possible to get high crit rates, and it is actually possible to get a high crit resist, which in a game where, again, we're talking about stats. As I mentioned at the beginning, I hate it when it's all about speed and attack. And attack is all about high damage, crit rates, getting those crits in. Why wouldn't you take crit resist? And why wouldn't you take accuracy then? Because there's not many ways to reduce accuracy. But the question would be then is, are there ways to increase your accuracy high enough to really make it worth not taking crit rate over? We'll take a look at some other stats, I guess. Evasion, the chance to dodge a hit. I was looking at runes and some of the other ways to see how much evasion rate, because correct me if I'm wrong, evading a hit altogether is way better than reducing a hit via damage resistance or defense. That's just me, which would mean evasion would be a prime stat as well to invest in. Because I don't really think that there's many ways to counter evasion. It's not listed here, and I did ask the devs to respond. There is actually a way to counter evade, and that's hit percentage. Hit percentage isn't seen too much on the warriors either, but I did see it on a rune where it increases your hit percentage and increases your damage against evasion, targets with evasion. If you don't know, skill warriors technically get a bonus to evasion, so I guess they're the evaders. I don't really deal too much with the skill warriors. I did take a look, but I didn't see too many of them. If you have 5 skill warriors, you get a bonus to evasion. So I'm just taking it at face value. Healing, the additional healing granted, blah, blah, blah. Received healing increases your healing. This one is a bit confusing. I'm going to go over all these together because when I read it the first time, I think it's a bit different. Damage bonus, the additional damage dealt by any attack. Because that's not true. It is, but it's not. It depends on how you read that. And I think they're missing a term. So let's read these next couple of ones. Physical damage and magical damage. The additional damage dealt by a physical and magical attack. Where is it here? Physical and magical damage by an attack. Having bonus damage actually seems better than just having a stat that says increasing physical or magic damage. Now, I get it. There are going to be those out there that say, well, some warriors deal physical damage and some deal magic damage. Okay, let's clear up a few things right now. Additional damage dealt by any attack. Okay, this is misleading because I have done some testing. I've done some testing in the monster takedown, guild bosses, towers, and I actually should have had some of that queued up to show you. But in further videos, I'll have some better editing. Is that this bonus damage does not apply to status effects, and that's why I brought out that you want to burn, blood curse. Those are all status effects. They deal fixed damage. It's not an attack, guys. This is not an attack. It is just damage that is done. Okay, if you don't buy that, record some videos and then maybe provide me some feedback in the comments, because we're going to take a look at, I'm going to interrupt it and take a look at a ticket I submitted to the devs response here. Here we go, where I asked them, I gave them a screenshot basically. What the hell? That's not what I wanted. But anyways, I asked them if status effect damage like burns, etc., are affected by damage reduction, stat, and I asked them if it falls under magical or physical. They asked me to clarify. It requires a bit more clarification. I sent them the damage reduction as well, damage resist, and I sent them the screenshots. Regarding the effect of damage reduction won't affect on damage resistance. However, in battle, a player can use runes, gears, as you have shared with us, debuff stacks increasing and will influence depending on the battle. That's a little misleading, and I think it's because of translation, but basically what I'm reading that as is that status damage is fixed and it is not affected by armor, which is defense, and it is not affected by damage resistance. It's also not inherently affected by bonus damage either. And you can verify that by going into a good way to do is take your physical team, their excel at burns, record it, slow it down, watch it, and the burn damage will be the same regardless. However, there is one caveat to that I did notice. Shields and guard. It's funny that the status effect damage cannot be resisted in terms of damage resistance, and that includes physical and magical. Burns are not inherently physical, nor are they magic, guys. That's why they're not affected by physical damage resistance either, or magical resistance. They're just status effects. They are fixed damage that are done based on the description. The caveat to that is unless one of the devs had said, I don't have it here, basically read the tooltip. Unless otherwise stated in the tooltip, fixed damage. But it's funny that shields and guard will absorb the damage done by these status effects. So if you want to counter status effects, which some of them honestly don't do that much damage, with the exception of like Windblade. I think Windblade hits hard as crap and it affects too many tunes, but WTF to that. But I do not have anything stating that Matt did it is not magic or physical, but trust me, it's not. It's not affected by magical or physical attacks. Nor is normal attacks considered magical or physical. I'm going to get a lot of pushback on this. I'm going to get a lot of argument about this. You're going to have to prove me wrong, and you're going to have to prove me otherwise. One of the ways that you can test this, again, I need to bring up the video. I don't know if I have it here. This is a screenshot of the maiden going in for a normal attack. Okay, she goes in and she hits, and you can see that she healed, but she only heals when we'll take a look at her skills here in a second. Advanced absorption. This is a rune that's on. You can see that she's healing, but she's only healing once. She's actually going in for a normal attack. She hits. There's some status effects on her, so there's a little bit of bonus damage, but advanced absorption is a rune skill that heals for X%. Oh no, that's not right. I actually take that back. She actually hit because advanced absorption triggers on a physical skill, not a physical attack. That's the wrong skill. I must not have it. Oh man, I missed it. So I almost was caught there off guard. But basically, she did a normal attack and it didn't heal at all. That's how you know is you unless you get a direct feedback from the devs. My opinion is that normal attacks are not magical nor physical, and until proven otherwise, you're gonna have to take it that way. However, normal attacks, physical attacks, magical attacks are subject to bonus damage and damage resistance, which is kind of confusing to a degree. Is why would you limit it to magic and physical damage? Why not just take straight out damage resist? Damage resist technically would seem like it would resist any attack. I digress. I guess a little more testing and stuff would have to be done. Maybe I would like to see some screenshots of some videos, but the information about runes here is very important. You cannot stack warrior buffs. You know, the attack from one warrior will not stack with another. You can't get 25 and 25% damage. So, you know, keep that in mind. But there is another caveat here is that when you're looking at your stats in your build, rune skill bonuses will not be visible on the warrior detail page. Meaning that when you look at your stats page, your runes, the effect of your runes, and somebody may be saying why? Well, because you may have crit resist. There are some runes that provide 20% crit rate. That will not be reflected in your stats page because they're only active in battle. So when you go into battle, even though your attribute, when you're out of battle, may show 20% crit rate here. If you have a rune that gives you 20% extra crit rate, it will not actually activate until you're in battle. However, jewel effects like immobilization, crit damage bonus, those, same thing with your artifact blessing, that will be reflected in your stats page here, which just brings me to kind of like sum this all up, since I'm just kind of, this is just kind of a rambling video, is come in here, read these, and do some testing for yourself. The attack order of whoever's faster is bullshit, but whatever. But pay attention to these lesser known ones. It's not just about crit rate and crit damage, even though it is. I mean, I'm sorry to say that's just the reality. But you can counter a lot of a person's crit rate by investing in crit resist. And now that you know that accuracy actually helps you land critical hits, and there's actually not a lot of warriors that reduce your accuracy, maybe accuracy is not a bad way to go. You know, can you get accuracy? I mean, you can. I mean, there's a lot of ways to do that. Taking a look at the index on the jewels, you know, I want to cover this in another video, but when you look at the attack type, you have crit rate, damage, damage bonus, accuracy. I mean, this is like stating that you have a chance between 20% crit rate and 14% accuracy, which both affect crit. I mean, but because there are so many tunes that actually reduce your crit rate, and you can actually invest in crit resist. Basically, if you put on a 20% crit resist jewel, you're actually negating the 20% crit rate, because it's a 20. It is a 1-for-1. It's a 20% reduction in the crit rate, and it's a crit resist chance. You can actually negate what's going on. So does that mean accuracy is better, for even though it's only 14%? So I got the little hiccups there. You're going to have to make that decision when you start to build out your tunes. There are some niches though, and I want to cover some of them. One is evade. It is much better to evade an attack than it is to get hit by an attack. That being said, more needs to be known about evade. Can you get a high enough evasion rate without sacrificing damage? Defense here, I mean, I wouldn't do it. The other caveat is immobilizing. Know your tunes. I want to give you an example here using one of my favorite tunes here, and I want to go to the index, is Swift Tracer. She's actually an immobilizing tune. She can paralyze for 2 turns. 45% chance to paralyze. Okay, enemies with static debuff, but she has an inherent 25% chance. When building your tune, crit rate, speed, okay, I get it, but you want to increase this chance to immobilize. If your target can't act, they can't do dick to you. I apologize for the language. So when you're building out your tune, you need to consider that. Yes, she needs crit rate, but when you come in here, maybe put on immobilization runes. She's not going to benefit from a healing rune, but an argument can be made for speed. If your opponent isn't thinking about immobilization resistance, then this is going to be a nightmare for the other team. And people are going to hate you. And I love that. Again, same thing with the mind attributes. You know, all these 2 warriors here, they love to freeze people. I mean, it's just a natural fact. And then you got this chick. She actually can reduce crit rate. Is it? Crit rate reduction via skill. This is something you're going to have to consider. Let's go into the index here and bring her back up so you can see it. Attack down. Attack plus 25 crit damage. Where's it at here? Oops. 70% chance to reduce 25% of the target's crit rate. Think of this as she's going to automatic. She has a 70% chance of reducing your crit rate by 25%. However, she cannot reduce your accuracy rate. You see what I mean by thinking about your tunes a little bit different? Go back to the facts here, guys. It's written right here. You can take away 25% of your crit rate and Then you have to take into consideration crit resist. But if you stack accuracy, you still have a high chance of critting. Now, I'm not telling you what or how to invest in your stats. I'm just saying take a look, know your tunes, kind of read the descriptions, but on your immobilizing tunes, look for ways to increase their chance to immobilize. Know if your target has resistances to it. Magical physical damages, I mean, I would rather have straight bonus damage, resistance to any attack, than limiting it to just magic and physical. That way I can resist normal attacks. But in general, because physical and magical are generally dealt by skills, they're going to do more damage. So consider that. And the other consideration, when you are looking at your tunes, is the gear. You have your artifact gear where they have, if you haven't seen this screen, I'll go over it when I get into it, but you can level up to get crit resist, damage bonus, crit resist on your gear here. It's not just on jewels, it's not just here. Runes can provide, if you haven't had a chance to look at your runes and go in here, you'll find that, you can get crit rate, crit resist, evasion, and stuff like that on here. There are multiple ways to build your tunes, but you got to understand the stats, and in order to understand the stats, you need to understand the tunes that you're building. I think that speed and attack and crit damage will always rule regardless, but your healers need to be able to heal, and your debuffers need to go first. That is something to consider. If you have somebody like her, I like her because she increases my crit rate. At higher levels, she increases your crit damage, and she does reduce attack. You want her to go in a certain order, either before your attackers or after your attackers, so that she affects the next turns. Just keep this stuff in mind, and let's get a discussion going on. What have you seen? Have you seen any particular stats that are helping you counter, maybe pissing off your enemy in PvP, making the fights take longer, making them work for it? What did you think, guys? Hit me up in the comments. Like the video if I helped you think about things a little bit differently, and consider hitting the subscribe button. Thanks, guys.